to our moderator, Mr. Riju Ray. He is the Chief Business Officer from IDFI. He evangelizes IDFI solution from SMEs, unlocking value and opportunities for genuine small and medium businesses enterprises. Mr. Ray is a MBA from INSEAD and is a regular speaker and moderator at IMI events. For the panelists, we have Mr. Vishwadeep Bajaj. He is the CEO and co-founder from Value First. Mr. Harsh Pokharna, co-founder and CEO from OK Credit. Mr. Chaitanya Ramalinga Goda, director and co-founder from Wakefit.co. Mr. Vasudevan Chinnathammai, co-founder from NinjaCart, and Ms. Meghna Suryakumar, founder and CEO from Credibot. I would request all the delegates to keep posting their questions in the chat box, and the panel will address few selected questions at the end of the session. Over to you, Mr. Ray.
Thank you, Shivani. So let me start by thanking IMEI for having us here, and also by thanking all the panelists who have found time for this session here. So thanks a lot for that. I've had the good fortune of working with many companies from different industries that deal with SMEs, and I've always found it fascinating how they look at it from different perspectives and often in contradictory ways. And so it's for me, it's very intellectually stimulating to hear viewpoints about SMEs. Having said that, the topic today I actually found very confusing. It talks about if I talk about the changing the face of the SME, and the first thing I wanted to understand was who is the SME here, right? So it's possible to, by some definitions, consider everybody here an SME, I guess, but that's the easy way out. I'll be lazy as a session, so I thought let's just make it more interesting. I think one of the ways to think of the SME today is to consider Ramu Panwala or Abdul, the bed and mattress wala, as the SME, right? And take their perspective and then interpret the question, according to me, in this way, that we should understand Ramu and understand Abdul in terms of what their present situation is, and try and change their fate, if not change their face. I mean, we definitely want to find a way to make their lives better. This, according to me, after having thought a bit about it, is what this session is all about. That's probably why we are here today. So with that subject clarified, I want to just give some ground rules today. The session is about 50 minutes long, and we have some time pressure as well. So Shivani will act as the timekeeper, and you will have to have a look at the chat windows. So she'll give you proper warning saying you have 1 minute left or 2 minutes left. And eventually when it's 5 minutes, you can probably hear the shrieking voice of Shivani coming in saying, stop, stop, stop. And then you'll have to stop as well. So she's basically going to be a very strict timekeeper, Shivani. I hope you can help us with that. And
of course, we'll do.
Also, to make it interesting, I'm going to divide the session into 3 logical parts. The first one I'm going to call the changing face of the SME, which is, look, let's try and understand how the SME itself is changing. Let's understand them to begin with, right? The second part of it I call facing the changing SME. So this is interesting. So if the SME is changing, how do you react to it as companies often? And the third one I'm going to call changing the face of the SME, which is let's go and change their face, right? So I'm going to try and tackle all 3 of them, and what I'm going to do is, just to make it interesting, I'm going to do it in parts. So I'm going to start with Harsh and Vasu to begin with, and I'm going to go to Chaitanya, and then I'm going to go to Meghna and Vish, and then do these 3 sessions. And while we do these 3 sessions, just as a note, what I'd like everybody to do is to kind of introduce themselves and their businesses as well to the audience. Also, as part of this, at a point where I have asked the basic questions, I would invite the other panelists, if they are interested, to ask questions, right, to the 2 people that I'm speaking to then. And that's completely welcome. And the audience, if you have questions, just send it on chat, and I will try and be your medium and convey it to the folks here, right? So with that said, let me start off today, and for the first specific section, which is called the changing face of SMEs, I am going to invite Vasu, if you can just wave to the audience here. There he is. And Harsh, if you can wave to the audience here as well. Vasu is from NinjaCart. which is trying to really disrupt the area of vegetable delivery, vegetable vending, and make very broad supply chain changes there. And Harsh, who is looking at the grocery owner, right, or the kirana store owner, and trying to make them adopt technology in a way, so to solve a very basic problem that they have. So I'd like to reach out to them and try and understand the SMEs first. That's the first section really. So just to help us get started, my question to both of you is help me understand the SME, how they behave and how they adopt technology. And let's start with you, Vasu. Vasu, you're on mute, man.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And Vasu, co-founder at NinjaCart. So what we essentially do is we run an end-to-end supply chain for vegetable and fruits. Essentially, we procure it from the farmers and then deliver to the doorstep of retailers such as kiranas and then local restaurants. Essentially, what we try to build is an Unilever or a P&G for vegetable and fruits. And how do you really make it super convenient and super easy for retailers or small businesses to buy vegetable and fruits as easy as they sort of buy the other products. So that's what we do. And the major, our customers are the local kirana stores. About 95% of our customers are the local kiranas who run a standalone vegetable stores, or they keep a vegetables as part of their regular grocery stores, or the local restaurants, which is a entrepreneur, single unit restaurants, who predominantly wake up 3 in the morning, go to city markets and procure vegetable foods and come back. So just to understand the cohort of the customers, they're the most unorganized in a lot of ways, right? Like unorganized in terms of the information, unorganized in terms of the media consumption, unorganized in terms of the technology they use. Because there's no one platform they all sort of come together where we could sort of target them or sort of leverage technology in a way that could sort of make it easy for them. So what happens is like they're fairly fragmented, and then like we need to sort of have a feet on the street to sort of reach in every retailer on the ground to sort of talk about NinjaCart and also get them to onboard. Get them to come onto the platform and get them to sort of use the technology. Right? So that's how we see that. And from a behavior standpoint, because these are traders, they procure and sort of sell on a daily basis. The trust is on the lower side, right? Like, they are very short-term value seeking. They would be very arbitrary. In terms of in terms of the price. If a price sort of falls around the market, they would sort of go to the market. If price is better in Jakarta, they'll come here. So you have to perform every day and be better every day to sort of retain these set of customers actually. Yeah.
I know, but if I can just sort of drive a bit deeper in this question, So you gave me examples of how you looked at this specific segment and realized specific innovations like doing it the previous night, etc., were important in adopting technology. Tell me a bit about that experience of adoption. How did you get them to do that, or what did you understand was fundamental about it?
Yeah. So when we started, we started way back in 2015. I think initial our thesis was, I think people going to value convenience alone and then sort of move to NinjaCart. And also what we also underestimated is, initially we said, okay, we're going to go take the orders from the retailers and plan a purchase and then come back and deliver. For example, we would take an order on Monday and then deliver on a Wednesday. But that sort of completely failed because the current way the retailer sells all this produce and then the night he decides what to procure next day. So we have to sort of go back and overhaul the entire supply chain and sort of ensure to make this happen. And the risk is because it's ours a perishable supply chain, which means that we need to do a forecasting. If I'm going to take an order on a Tuesday and deliver on a Wednesday, Tuesday night at 9 o'clock and deliver on a Wednesday morning at 6 o'clock, then which means that we need to forecast and procure vegetable fruits and keep it. And which is one of the most riskiest thing because it's all perishable. And then if you're not selling, then you sort of end up dumping it. The other side is if you under forecast and then if you don't have a tomato, then people want to again go back to the market. So we need to sort of find that balance, and that sort of took us almost 3 years to really get to a stage where it's comfortable to sort of not make losses. I think that's one of the very structural innovation we brought in the initial days. And then second thing is also because there is no standard quality of vegetable fruits because it's not like soap or a parachute hair oil. Every tomato is different. So which means that we need to be like super bang on the quality. And since the product reaches the store, let's say at about morning 8 o'clock, and if we're gonna be like any way we sort of fall short on the quality, the guy is gonna get pissed off. I mean, he's gonna sort of go back to the market because he doesn't want to take a risk, because at 8 o'clock if he realizes that he's not getting a tomato, then he loses the sale for the day. I mean, he can't go to the market at 8 o'clock in the morning. So we need to sort of work on and sort of ensure that the quality that we provide is super reliable, and then like continue to build on that. And how do you sort of keep changing to the source that sort of changes every day, right? Like I was telling which other day, I think for us as a business, the demand, supply, the selling price, the purchase price, and the quality, all these five things changes every day morning 8 o'clock. And how do you build a supply chain that sort of thrives on this uncertainty? I think that's where larger part of our innovation and the work goes in.
If there's one quote I'm going to take away from today, that's every tomato is different. That is profound. That's a profound statement of quality, of quality control. It's amazing. So, Harsh, over to you. Actually, I wanted to understand the same question from you. Help me understand that Mr. Bhatia, the Kirana store owner, and what does he do, and what are his problems that you're trying to solve? How does he adopt technology?
Got it. So I'll just take a step back and I'll tell you like what as a company we believe in, right? And so like we believe that technology is available for everyone, right? But it's not available in simple to use format, right? And the consequence of that is that a lot of unorganized businesses, which Vasu spoke about, right, like who are also our users, they do not get an equal opportunity to be part of the digital economy, right, which is basically growing. So as a company, like we aim to make very simple to use technology so that like we can enable these unorganized businesses also to become a part of the digital economy. So that is what we do. And in that aspect, like we have three different products. So like one is OK Credit, like which basically helps you collect your money faster. The second is OK Shop, which is basically a digital storefront for your shop. And the third is OK Staff, which helps you manage your staff's attendance and payroll, etc. So, like that is like as a company what we do. Now coming to an SME, right? So like as a company we see these SMEs as individuals, very frankly, right? Like we do not see them as businesses. And like because we have been seeing that these people are now continuously using WhatsApp, they're using YouTube, Hotstar, and a lot of different applications. And so that awareness is coming to them, right? Like where now like they realize that okay, if they can use these mobile applications for solving different problems in their life, be it entertainment, communication, etc., why can't they use the same mobile and maybe different apps to solve various business problems in their business? So what we have been seeing is that there's strong pull for such business applications in the market compared to the push which was there maybe 3 or 4 years earlier, where like people would have these sales team and they would go out in the market and push software to the merchant. So what we are seeing is that there's a huge pull coming from the market to like where people are self discovering. The other thing we are seeing on how these people adopt tech, right, like is that these are very tight knit communities, and there is strong word of mouth, because like if one person is using an application, this feel that sense of pride to tell others about that application, that hey, they are advanced, they are moving ahead with time, and like they are getting more advanced, and they take that sense of pride to tell everyone in their community about that. And people also trust each other, generating that social proof, so which basically helps us in our distribution and adoption of our technology, because like unlike Vasu, like we do not have a sales team or feet on street on ground, right? Like our distribution is entirely digital, and that plays a very important role for us.
In fact, Harsh, I remember one of the stats you quoted last time, that you have this staggering 5 million merchants on your platform.
Yeah.
And I'm obviously so concluding from this that you've hit some sweet spot there.
Yeah. So I'll
Yeah,
tell you a story, right? Like so
tell me, yeah.
Yeah. So initially, so basically when we just started OK Credit, and like we didn't put it on Play Store, but like we went out in the market, started telling people about the application. We started getting some adoption, right? Later on, we realized that because it was not on Play Store, people were actually using Share It to share it with their friends, their network, their community, right? And we started getting a lot of requests from people, right, on to whom it got shared here. Even I want to create my account, and the entire day we would just like take phone calls and keep creating accounts. But when we changed it to a do it yourself platform where like people could self register, create their own account, verify their own account, we saw a huge jump in our growth, right? Which led us to believe that like people are using technology, they are aware of how to use it. If you can give them a strong use case, you will see organic pull from the market, and they will adopt it themselves, basically.
Harsh and Vasu, I see this dichotomy of sorts when, with my very basic understanding of this market, that you see the man on the street, on his smartphone, watching videos on WhatsApp, interacting with technology. At the same time, you find that the man on the street is also not really doing any e-commerce per se on it. As you know, the number of users of e-commerce in India is abysmally low. I think about 5 million or so users actually do e-commerce. If it's about shopping online, really.
Yeah.
So that dichotomy is very strange, and I wonder if it's about the product mix or it's about the kind of service you're providing that causes adoption, which is self or driven by push. So where do you fall? Vasu, I think I kind of know where you stand, but you mentioned the word fickle when you described your vegetable vendor, that Mr. Abdul with his bananas. He's basically literally he's definitely um, going to go somewhere else, right? If you don't give him the right banana.
Yeah.
So what is it that worked for you? What was your realization? Did you try? You obviously have a lot of tech enabled stuff, right?
Yeah.
Did you try self adoption? Did it work? And if not, what happened? Help me understand that part.
Yeah. So I think for us, I think from a Ninja Cut standpoint, the tech was I mean major lever to sort of drive growth and also drive efficiency, right? Because early when we started off, we had folks on the ground who sort of visited every retailer on every day and took a order on the paper actually, right? And then they sort of come and post it, and then they will come and punch it in their systems. And eventually, the folks were punching the orders on their mobile when they sort of the sales able to punch on his mobile, and the retailer was just sort of read out the requirements that he had, and we couldn't scale after a while because you need X amount of order taking folks to really reach out to more number of things. So then that's when we launched the whole app for the customers targeting these Kirana stores. I think initially we sort of had a lower penetration. Like I think we had about 20% of Kiranas using app, whereas 80% were still either calling up and giving order, or someone had to sort of go and meet them and take the order. But I think in the last 3 years we've seen a huge transformation, because I think largely folks got a smartphone. Early there was no smartphone with the folks, but now they have a smartphone because they have to use a WhatsApp or a YouTube and Facebook. I think that's sort of become a mandatory now. So now people have infrastructure in place. Now it becomes easy for us to really install our app. And we have it on Play Store, and then when we visit them, we install it on their app. The person sort of demos it to them how to order and etc. Now almost 98% of our orders come through mobile phone actually, and customers find it very easy because you have price, you have inventory, everything visible there. They feel they could just sort of do it themselves, don't have to depend on anyone to really place the order. That's how we saw it. But I think the underlying are learning from them, or like understanding is like I think if you can show value, I think the folks are willing to adopt any technology, right? I think end of the day, the value terms any technology, and technology is fairly easy for them. I mean, like you just can just teach them once they pick it up. I think value comes first. I think if you can demonstrate that, then I think technology is not a blocker at all.
Yes, but you fall on the camp where you have to go and make them sort of kind of learn, teach them a bit, then they start using it, right? But Harsh, I know in discussing, sorry, you were saying something, Vasu?
Yeah. No, because I think largely because since our community, there's no media consumption which is where you could sort of market it and then let them download. Plus, also from a business standpoint, we can't let anyone order because we don't ask money upfront. We take the money when we deliver. I mean, we had cases where people just download the app, order for like 20,000 worth of products, and then there's no shop there, right? So we have to be extra careful. So we have someone verify the shop before we deliver the products.
That's fair point. So the business model kind of dictates a few things.
Yeah.
So Harsh, looking at you now, so what you use this term virality, when we spoke last time,
Yeah.
and literally you hit something, in terms of some sweet spot with functionality and people and product market fit. What was it that made this viral that people started just adopting it and using it?
Yeah. So definitely, see, like when we started again, like I remember the first version we had of the application, and when we went to this grocery store, which was right outside our apartment, right? Like he wouldn't use it because first of all, he wouldn't understand it, like how to use it. The UI, the UX was very difficult for them to use. If not for the owner, more importantly, the employees, because you need the employee buy-in to actually use this application in your store, right? Because the store owner wouldn't be in the store all the time, and the employee basically has to manage the ledger. So like when we actually went to the store owner with the first version, first it was difficult to use, they wouldn't use it. Second, even after like a lot of iterations where we could make it very easy to use, with a WhatsApp like interface, localization in your particular language, number first rather than text first. So we made all of those changes and finally got that person to start using it and also get the employees buy-in to start using the application. The second problem which arose was that people didn't trust the software. We saw that people maintained two ledgers, like they would maintain a physical copy ledger, like which they did, and they would also maintain the OK Credit ledger, because they would check every night or whether all the calculations in OK Credit are correct. Does it match with what my calculations are, or would OK Credit data disappear tomorrow? Okay, is it still there even the next day? Right. So they had a lot of trust issues with the the application. But what we saw was that if you the easy part we solved through product, right? Like by making the interface easy, number first, localization, voice first, issues like features and all of that. But the trust part we could only solve with social proof, right? Because as in when more people around you start using the application, and like when they tell you that, hey, I'm using this, you automatically start to trust, versus me coming and telling you that, hey, you can use this application, which the trust score would be very less. So I think that is how we solved these problems.
No, that's brilliant. I mean,
And
the thing
basically
about
in virality, to your question, right? Like where the virality kicked in because it was super simple for someone to use and people were talking about it.
this insight of trust, when you said calculations, they were matching it at night. It seems to chime with some of the stuff I've seen elsewhere. Like, why are payment systems not adopted? Some of the questions are, is it about fraud? Is it about just faith in technology? Is this technology going to screw me? There's some deep underlying fear sometimes, right? And you're kind of stating that in a way. So thank you so much. I think we probably are running over time in the first section. It's just been fascinating to see the two of you share your point of view. I'm going to move to Chaitanya now, and somebody who is definitely a pioneer in his space, in terms of the strategy you've adopted to go to your end user. I'm going to let you describe your business, obviously, to the users, but you've actually decided to go directly to the consumer, or what is typically been the mattresses business or the furniture business has largely been using retailers, right? So, when you did that, clearly you went against this conventional thinking. So many brands do that with retailers. Why did you do that? Why did you not want to do the standard SME retailer route? Satya, you're on mute actually.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Yeah, I think the simple answer would be that we didn't have the margins to provide all the people in the supply chain. So when we started the company in late 2015, early 2016, one of the simple priorities was that can we give an amazing product at a super affordable price point? Why should a great mattress that can give you quality sleep be worth 30 or 40,000 rupees? Why can't it be available for 10, 11, 12,000 rupees? A king size one. That was the premise with which we started. And when we started working on going down this path, we realized we had to constantly backward integrate and remove layers from the supply chain between the company and the consumer's home. So it wasn't that we started off with this vision, we started off with a problem. But on the way, we encountered all of these smaller problems to solve, and we realized that the only way to do what we are trying to achieve is to backward integrate. So do your own R&D, have your own factories, have your own logistics as much as possible, and finally you deliver it to the consumer's home. So now in these 4.5 5 years, we have served about 5 6 lakh customers, almost all pin codes in India. We have the complete range of sleep and home solutions, whether it is sofas, other furniture, wardrobes, mattresses, beds, bed linen, home decor. We have the complete spectrum, and we have ended up getting into R&D and manufacturing and delivery for all of these products, which means we've had to learn manufacturing, we've had to learn logistics, we've had to learn warehousing, uh, mid mile, last mile, final installation in the consumer's home. Because that was a small pain point again, where a lot of companies would either deliver in one visit and then install in another visit, or they would say, we will deliver it, you get your own carpenters to install. So that is again a broken promise. So we have our own carpenters on payroll. So when you look at the whole supply chain that I talked about, we end up being consumers from SMEs. So it has become that these people who are working as carpenters, as mattress salesmen, as production floor assistants, so they have all become part of the reimagined or evolved supply chain. They're in the same industry, but they've suddenly become part of a new supply chain where the way they do things are slightly different. So the trade remains the same, the skill remains the same, but they've had to evolve to be part of what Harsh said as being participative in a digital economy. So that is what has happened. So whether it is housekeeping services, sourcing of small fabrics and zippers and wood and glue and so forth, or whether it is admin services, whether it is a small person owning three trucks in a far off place, say in Bhopal or Indore or somewhere else. So these are our SMEs that we constantly engage and deal with, and that is an integral part of how we are able to deliver customer promises, and they are an invariable and integral part of our supply chain.
So, Chaitanya, I get that Elon Musk feel when you talk about it in the sense that there is the GMs and the Toyotas are doing it a certain way, and here you come in like literally with your grand visions. I noticed that you talk about unit economics. Almost it's built into it. You've thought about it from the perspective of unit economics. It has to work. That if I reduce the price, I can't go and beg for money from the investor. I'm going to actually make it work by adapting the supply chain. The other thing I notice is the scientific method. You keep mentioning R&D as the thing that many times you mentioned it today. But this, you told me last time about that mattress model. Let's call him Mukesh. You said fundamentally there's a problem with the retailer when he sells the mattress and the way he approaches that sale. Can you make that a bit more sort of vivid for visceral for the audience here? What is that? How is that Mukesh selling his mattress?
Sure. I think there was no problem with mattress Mukesh per se. It was a problem with the value chain.
Right.
What has happened is by the time a mattress or a fun piece of furniture reaches Mukesh, and you as a customer walk into that store, he has no technical grounding in answering any question around sleep or ergonomics or posture or spinal alignment. He is not at all knowledgeable about that. His only interest is I am reselling three brands. Which one gives me the most commission? What is the budget of the customer that has walked in? Can I look at his watch? Can I look at his car? Can I look at how he's dressed? And do a matchmaking in my mind and say, I'll pitch this, which can give me the best commission. and probably he is going to buy. So that is a very bare bones way of how these products were being sold, especially because there is no standardization. Just like Vasu nicely mentioned that each tomato is different, each sofa is different, each bed is different, because you cannot, there's no standardization. There is no screen size and memory and cable size and so forth to that you can compare across products. So if somebody is cheating you by giving substandard products, there is very little you can do as a consumer to check the type of wood, the type of foam, or type of fabric. You cannot check as a normal consumer. So that was the purchase experience that was broken. And then post purchase, you had no clue what to do with the installation. You had no clue what happens if you don't like it after you take it home. You don't know what to do if there is a warranty claim somewhere down the line. The retailer is out of the picture. They'll say, call this toll free number, deal with the brand directly, my job is done. So purchase and post purchase both were broken experiences that direct to consumer should solve, which means our salespeople should be able to knowledgeably answer questions about ergonomics, sleep. What will happen when your body changes or when you move to a new sleeping surface? How will a sofa impact your back posture and lower back support? So those are things that they should be knowledgeable to answer. And when things go wrong, as they invariably will, we should be available to honor a 100-day trial policy or a 10-year warranty policy where they just have to pick up the phone and we should do the rest. So in all of these, if you notice, the SMEs are an integral part of it. Whether installation, whether reselling, whether delivery, whether people who provide our raw materials and packaging material, they're all SMEs. So I think that we've reimagined the whole thing, but it's there. It's there. They're all part of what we're delivering to the customer as a commitment.
So I'm going to be slightly provocative here in the sense that, obviously a tablet or a laptop or even an Apple product can be fairly complicated, right? But you walk into an Apple store, you find somebody coming to you and doing a fairly good job of describing the technology and all. So what is different? Is it that there is a scope to work with retailers eventually, in the sense that people can do this kind of the SMEs can come up to speed in a way? Or like you mentioned earlier, some of the SMEs, they became part of a supply chain in different ways. So could you talk about that part?
You're right, but I'll go back to the same point that I mentioned to clarify and answer this question, which is an Apple iPhone 12 in the showroom in Garuda Mall is the same as an Apple iPhone 12 in Phoenix Market City, is the same as Apple iPhone 12 in Mumbai. So the salespeople's job is much, much more easier because the specifications are already compared. It's a standard product. A TV is a TV, a phone is a phone, apparel is apparel. But when it comes to furniture and mattress and sleep products, people don't know what to compare. Should I compare a Wakefit one with a Kurlon or Sleepwell? How are the two different? How is coir different from spring? How is Shisham wood different from teak wood? And what about the longevity when you compare it to engineered wood, which seems so classy to look at, but you're saying warranty is only 3 years. You're saying Shisham wood gives you 10-year warranty. Why should I do this? What are the pros and cons? It's too much of a wide spectrum for anybody to be trained well enough across the country, even in remote parts of the country, to give the same quality of service to customers who walk into the store. That is where it's not going to be about technology or whether they can come up to this level. It is just the complexity of having it. And as every month we are in business, we are adding more products. So how do you imagine a small reseller somewhere in, say, Cuttack, in Orissa, actually being able to understand all these nuances and give the same service as what we can give in a centralized way? So it's much tougher. So technology adoption there comes in a very different way, saying, can they talk about the brand, but then the heavy lifting is done by us? Can they be franchise owners, but the operations are done by us? So there are various ways we'll have to find answers to down the line, but it's not the exact same model that is there and copy paste it to make it work.
Great, Chaitanya. Thanks a lot for that. There's a bunch of questions which have come on the chat window. Now, it's going to fall on Vish and Meghna to answer those questions. They appear to be appear to be also geared towards the areas that you're operating in. So it's good to see that really that they're falling in line. But what I'm going to do is tee you guys off with some basic questions so that you can talk about your businesses as well. People get to know your businesses and what you do. Meghna, maybe I'm going to start with you. My question is, um, how can you change the face and the fate of the SMEs?
Okay. So I want to set a little bit of context to answer this question, right? So first, in terms of what we do at CreditWatch. So CreditWatch is an AI-based platform, and we work with small, medium, and large businesses to help them reduce all the risks with respect to their receivables, right? We also work with large financial institutions and fintechs to help them, reduce risk with respect to lending. Now, in terms of the context that we're in, the scenario we're here in today, right? You said the context of who do you think an SME is. So I'm going to challenge that a little bit, right? So I don't think the SME is just a Kirana store owner or a mattress wala. Like Wakefit right here is an SME that's just disrupted the entire supply chain, right? Similarly, there are many SMEs. I think when the Prime Minister did this video conference with startups last week, there was an innovator in Kerala, and he made atta out of jackfruit. Now, suppose that jackfruit has to reach the end user. There's a whole new supply chain that he needs to farm, and the entire chain for it to reach the Kirana store to sell the jackfruit. So, in terms of set context of who and what an SME is, of course, Kirana store walas and pan walas are SMEs, but anybody who's making revenues from 0 to 250 crores is an SME because they're still not large enough to be considered a very large business. And why is this definition really important? Because it's these businesses that have 0 to 250 crores in revenue contributing to 24% of our GDP today, right? And if we really have to align ourselves in terms of becoming a completely digital economy, the 24% maybe needs to go to 35, 40, 50%. They need to have a larger share of the pie in terms of how they're going to take over the new economy and participate. And the only way they can do that is by being a part of the formal digital economy. Now, in terms of how can we change the face of these SMEs, right? We did a survey and we asked 500,000 SMEs as to what is the problem that they have, what is the problem that they face, and they said they have two major problems that they face. First is that they need a better access to credit, right? They need faster credit, cheaper credit. Second thing they said is they need more customers, right? They need to make more sales. So these are the top two things that's in the mind of any SME, whether he's a panwala or whether he's in the supply chain or whether he's a super kirana, not just a kirana, right? Or he's in the agri-tech business himself. So everybody wants more customers. They want to get better and cheaper credit. So that is why CreditWatch decided that this is what we're going to solve. We're going to help these businesses get faster and cheaper credit. We're going to help these businesses grow and empower themselves so that they can get more sales, right? So then, how do you do that? Even traditionally, how do you know about your traditional guy who has a little shop in Crawford Market or who's got a store in Avenue Road, right? How do businesses discover each other? We have all the India marts of the world, but all of them are very limited marketplaces. They're like the Naukris and Monster.com. But you don't have a LinkedIn for businesses where there's no limit to how you can discover your counterparty, right? So the SMEs now need to look at how they're going to change their face themselves, of how the others will look at them when they do business, right? And that's what's going to change the face of Indian SMEs. Also, in terms of access to technology, why can't small businesses use technologies which is available to them at a single button to make better decisions? Because how do you grow to be a Reliance? How do you grow to be an Infosys? It's the quality of decision making that helps you grow. Right? How Wakefit decided it's going to disrupt the entire supply chain, say go directly to the customer. How do you enable these businesses to make these kind of decisions so that you could be a shop in Crawford Market today? Why can't you be sitting in the heart of the business district tomorrow and be a large corporation? So for these kind of aspirations, right, for small and medium businesses to really break the ceiling and go to the next level, right, they really need these tools that help them make better decisions. And that's exactly what CreditWatch does. Right, to give you an instance, we were discovered by a small business in Crawford Market called Sri&M Electricals. I've actually gone to Crawford Market and visited them. They have like a small electrical goods and cable shop and a small floor on top where they have one CA who sits and decides whether I'll give 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days invoice credit to their customers. The guy found me on Twitter. So this is what SMEs are doing today. And he said, I want to use CreditWatch so I can decide, whether I can give 30 or 60 or 90 days credit to new customers I'm discovering, because I still don't know enough about them. And I don't want to be a hyperlocal business, right? I want to be able to, distribute all over the country. Then how do I make this decision? And he's been using CreditWatch for the past 1.5 years, right? And meeting, the entrepreneur at Sri&M was really like an epiphany for us, because we discovered that, what does the Indian SME really need? They need to be able to make quality decisions. There's another small SMB in Bangalore, right? And they were manufacturing certain kinds of parts that were very useful for, nuclear installations and for installations in electric power stations. And this was a brand new business. And they couldn't directly bid for an RFP. So they wanted to evaluate the quality of the partner who they would do business with, right? And they ordered a report from CreditWatch. And they said when they saw this report, they're like, wow, this is exactly what I wanted to know, to partner, with this organization. So that is what we're doing. So this is how you change the face of SMEs so that they can make, better quality decisions.
Sorry, folks, to interrupt.
Thanks, Shivani. You're definitely doing your job. Thanks a lot. So, Meghna, what I'm hearing, as a, if you wouldn't mind, could you go on mute, please, Meghna? Thanks. What I'm definitely hearing is this point about trust coming out from what you're saying, actually. Whatever you said here, it resonates. You're saying, let's create this marketplace of SMEs talking to each other, working with each other. And the one thing that allows that marketplace to function is trust on both sides. Can one SME trust the other? And if somebody, I think somebody asked this question, what are one of the key enablers that helps SMEs innovate or grow, etc.? Definitely trust will be one of them, I think. But I'm going to leave it there. I know we are going to run out of time very shortly, and I want to give it to Vish to talk. And he has years of experience in this domain. He's seen so many waves of technology, and right now he's his product is used by thousands of companies for reaching out to the end consumer. It's almost like allowing those companies you described as SMEs, Meghna. He looks at those SMEs, the innovators, the fintechs, provides them the tools to expand, grow in the new age economy. Right, Vish? So same question to you, really. How can you change the face and the fate of the SME?
Right. Hi. Thanks, Riju.
Yeah.
So first of all, I think business has been happening for a long time, and SMBs have been in the space doing their thing. The only thing is that now in the last 4 or 5 years, the whole context of how business is being done, how it can evolve, it has changed significantly. There is change all around us, and I think if we start from the customer per se, let's say SMB has a customer. Now the customer of the SMB could be an enterprise or it could be a consumer. Now, how does he service them? How does he sell to them? How does he support them? How does he collect money? All of those things require business processes, and now these business processes can be run using technology. This is what has been changing. If you see now, if his customer is a business, then that business is most likely already like him doing some kind of digital transformation, so is using technology to buy sell for himself. So his expectation is that as a SMB, his supplier will be available on some kind of digital platform. And likewise, if it is a consumer, now if you see the Indian consumer, largely millennials, they are now using technology for everything. And that is how Indian demography is different from rest of the world. So Indian consumer will use technology the most. So in that context, any SMB who has a millennial as a customer today, who will be tomorrow's customer, he has to use technology. Now, in that context, as a business, as Value First, we of course are a technology company. We also know that whilst we are doing our bit, but there is so much else which is happening around us. There are marketplaces which enable SMBs to come on board so they don't have to build their own e-commerce platforms. There are technology companies which give them SaaS solutions for running their customer service, or it could be their recruitment, or it could be supply chain. There is a lot of development which Indian startup ecosystem and service and product companies have done in the last years. So there is all the technology available to the SMB. In case of Value First, because we solve communication problems, so we help our customers communicate with their consumers, whether it is a SMS platform, voice platform like IBR technology, or whether it is WhatsApp for business. So we allow them to communicate with their consumers over WhatsApp. More recently, we added chatbot as a product. So all these products, whilst we sell them independently, we also integrate them and sell them as a marketing automation platform. So what we allow SMBs to do is, for example, if they want to solve the problem of lead generation, so they can use SMS, they can use email, and so on and so forth from us. And now we have seen how SMBs actually want to really embrace the technology in a more significant way. So what was originally, say, a lead generation program by them, now they are taking it to the next level where they can actually complete the whole commerce transaction. So our chatbot product, which was being used for lead gen, now is being used to showcase the SKUs to consumers, take the money from the customer using their some kind of payment gateway, and then in the backend it is integrated with some delivery platform, and then the shipment happens. So I think essentially, if you see, uh, technology can be leveraged in many ways. The good thing is that we have seen in the recent years, SMBs have started adopting, and you can see it all around us. So I will give you a very uh, closer home example, which we see as a consumer. Like Zomato platform was only about, say, ordering food from restaurants. Now we see local grocery stores, other kind of kirana stores being present on the Zomato platform. So you as a consumer now can buy things from the Zomato, which normally you wouldn't do on Zomato. So which means all the SMBs in this space, local kirana stores, local next door shops, are now available online. They're adopting what is being made available to them.
Next question. Shivani has very graciously allowed us 5 extra minutes because I, as usual, have screwed up with my timing. So what I'd like to do is try and be the mouthpiece of the audience a bit and tailor my questions. They'll come as googlies to you now because they are not what what I told you I'd ask you. But I'm sure you'll be a sport and answer those questions. So in your own ways, wish with the way you're solving the problem of demand generation for the SMEs, and how you're solving the problem of trust for the SMEs, right? You're doing this on your own. You're kind of making that happen, right? But could the government pitch in as well? Is there something that the government could do? And what do you think that the government must do to change things as this stand? And the others also, if you want to pitch in and answer this question, definitely that must have wish.
Sure. So I'll start. One of the biggest things when we need to build digital trust is to be able to have verifiable, credible information about businesses easily available, right? If we go and do a search on the registrar of companies, you would find information about any company that's registered in India. But when we have 60 million SMEs, right, the digital footprint is being created by the entrepreneurs and innovators about these SMEs. But from the government's end, we don't have a formal, up-to-date database where you could actually know, where is Sharma, who's Sharma and Co, right? What's their address? What's the basic information so that another person who wants to do business with them can discover them. So what the government should do is to be able to maybe, they've launched the portal where the MSMEs are registered. Maybe make an SME search available for anyone for a fee, like they've done for larger companies. I think that would actually add a lot. That would be transformational, because then you would actually know, because you don't even know who these 60 million SMEs are, right? You would rely on a Crediwatch or an India Mart or somebody else to tell you who they are, and you're limited to the information that we give you, where it's not the same for larger businesses. So I think that if the government opens up a little more data about smaller businesses, right, at least their identity and the basic, like a telephone directory, right? That would actually be, a good start. That's what we would
make a good point. Actually, they are collecting a lot of information. This government is collecting, creating this information all the time. Yes. So that is definitely different about this government. Wish from your side, Meghna, if you don't mind, just go on mute, please. Wish from your side, what is that one or two things, quickly you think the government should do?
Yeah, sure. I have spoken about. I will give an example of the regulatory body. So we work in the communication industry. So our regulator is TRAI. So what we know is that TRI has been taking consumer complaints very seriously. And in that context, for example, they have created a regulation to regulate how SMS is used as a medium to prevent fraud, phishing attacks, and so on. So there is now a blockchain-based technology which has been recommended by the regulator, which the industry is adopting. So it is work in progress. But this example just highlights how the regulatory bodies can also participate in the industry to make the ecosystem much more trustworthy and reliable.
Thanks a lot. The regulator does have a role to play, and we've seen often coming in and playing spoil sport in the past, or really changing things for the better. Sometimes they are very powerful. I'm going to just take one more question, which I find very interesting. Really, I'm going to ignore the funding question, but it's one of those. There's a question that was asked about, oh, how do you get funding as an SME? It's a very standard answer here. You go pitch, get people will believe you have a good business case. Not much to add here. But in the way the three of you, Harsh, Basu, and Chaitanya, have approached your markets, you've been rebels. Is the honest truth? You literally paved your own path here. It's amazing. So what is it that is what is that what is it that allows SMEs to innovate? That brings in a culture of innovation. If you have to pick something, how do you successfully innovate as an SME? What is that secret sauce that you found that worked for you? And I'm going to allow all three of you to answer and pick just one or two. Maybe Basu, you want to go first? Basu, you're on mute. Yeah.
So I think when we look at ourselves or like things around us, I think the cost is one of the major innovation, right, for India sort of market. I think what Chaitanya spoke about, I think our cost drove innovation. I think which is the case for us in a more than one ways, where the costs or your margin pressure and then like your pressure to become profitable and do it sustainable. I think that drives the major part of the innovation for us. Given, I mean, we are in a space where the model is already established. I mean, it's been there for 100 years. People have been buying vegetables and fruits. Now, how do we really do that in a more efficient way at cheaper than the market can do? I think that's where the large part of the innovation goes. I think today, a large part of innovation is in supply chain. How do we really reduce cost in each leg of the supply chain?
So it's almost like fundamentally first principle thinking. Look at the supply chain and figure it out. What's the best way to get next work is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think for us, we believe that innovation comes from listening to customers. And whether you're an SME, whether you're Apple, I think the next wave of innovation is only going to come if you're going to listen to your customers in ways that other competitors just cannot. We're just obsessed about listening to their feedback, positive, negative, what can be improved, anything. And on the funding side, I believe there's a simple policy we follow, which is you should be self-sustainable for your day-to-day operations. And any external funding that comes should be rocket fuel because investing cycles come and go. Investor interest in your company come and go. What is hot in this sector keeps coming and going every 3 years, every 4 years. But your company is your company. You can't be leaving your company's destiny to those whims and fancies of an external world. So if you want to control your destiny, you better be sustainable on your own. And anything that comes outside is bonus.
Wise words there. I completely echo that sentiment coming from where I come from. Harsha, I'm going to let you be the last speaker today, and maybe reveal to us the secret of innovation that you found.
Yeah. So I, again echo like the words, which both Vasu and Chaitanya spoke about. So of course, customer obsession is something we deeply value. Just to add one more point to it is like we basically try to look at problems which our users have on a very high frequency basis, almost on a daily basis, or maybe 10 times in a day basis, because we tend to solve for that mostly within our company, because like if we can solve a problem which they are facing day in and day out, I think like the adoption that we get is higher. the stickiness is higher, and that is something which we value like in our product solutions.
Makes sense, and I'm sure now this is going to be the last minute I have got here. Shivani is looking very stern and angry. So let me take the opportunity to thank IMAI actually for making this happen. It's such a pleasure to put together this group here, and to be part of this session and to hear so many different points of view. Thank you so much, Shivani. Thank you, IMAI, for having us. Also to the panelists, every time I come here, I feel like I learn when I talk to you. So thanks for sharing it. Thanks for being so transparent today. So thanks a lot, everybody, the audience, for coming as well. Hope you have a good one.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, bye.
Mr. A. Thank you all our speakers for making this discussion so engaging. Special thanks to our audience and our sponsor Gold Partners, Freshworks and Tata Teleservices, Silver Partner Language Technologies and Fellows, Bronze Partners Watch and Inshorts, Design Partner WiseApe, Media Partner Financial, Express PR Partner VKMK. Please stay tuned for other exciting discussions. Thank you everyone. We are signing off.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.